Hello everyone. Today we will be learning about the Partograph. Maternal mortality remains one of the major problems in the public health today, especially in the developing countries. Hence, Safe Motherhood Initiative was launched in the year 1987 with the objective of reducing maternal mortality by about 50% within 10 years. One of the methods introduced to achieve this objective was the use of Partograph. The Partograph was first introduced by Friedman in 1954. Henceforth, various versions of the Partograph has been in use. Today, we will be learning about the World Health Organization Partograph. So according to the World Health Organization, a partograph is a graphical record of the observations made of a woman in labor. Principles of the partograph. The active phase of labor commences at 4 cm of cervical dilatation. The latent phase of labor should not last longer than 8 hours. During the active phase, the rate of cervical dilatation should not be lesser than 1 cm per hour in the primigravida and 1.5 cm per hour in the multipara. Vaginal examination has to be recommended every 4 hourly. Coming on to the modified World Health Organization Partograph. The World Health Organization Partograph have been modified to make it easier and simpler to use. The latent phase of labor has been removed and the plotting of the partograph begins at 4 cm of cervical dilatation. So this is a picture of the World Health Organization Partograph. It consists of various parameters like the fetal heart rate, the amniotic fluid, the cervical dilatation, the uterine contractions, and the maternal vital signs, including the drugs and medications which are administered during the course of labor. So coming on to the various components of the partograph, here we have the 4 main components of the partograph. These include the identification data, the fetal condition, the progress of labor, and the maternal conditions. So this section out here represents the identification data of the mother. This section, second section here, represents the fetal condition or the fetal well-being. Then we have the larger section here representing the progress of labor, and then the last section here representing the maternal conditions. So we'll be looking into each of these sections one by one. So here we have the first section representing the identification data of the mother. These include the name of the mother, the gravida, the para or the parity of the mother, the hospital number, the date of admission of the mother, the time of admission, as well as the time of rupture of the membrane. Coming on to the other section, we have the fetal condition. So the fetal conditions, mainly we consider the fetal heart rate. So monitoring of the fetal heart rate is a safe and reliable way of ascertaining the status and well-being of the fetus. Ideally, it is assessed after every contraction or after the contraction has passed, and not during the contraction itself. The fetal heart rate is assessed for complete 1 minute and recorded every 30 minutes in the second stage of labor. So how do we represent the fetal heart rate? So say we have a fetal heart rate of about 140. On our examination, we found out that the fetal heart rate is about 140. Then on our subsequent examination, we see that the fetal heart rate has accelerated to about 150. On our next examination, we found out that the fetal heart rate has decelerated to around, say, 130. How do we represent it? We represent it with a dot against the line joining the assessed finding or the assessed value. So we first mark with a dot and then we join the dots with a line graph, right? This is the way we represent a fetal heart rate. So if the fetal heart rate is lesser than 110 beats per minute, suppose it is 100 beats per minute or say 90 beats per minute, it represents fetal distress. If the fetal heart rate is 160 and above, say 175, it represents fetal distress again. So in the lower border here, we see the amniotic fluid and the molding. So we'll be looking into these in the subsequent slide. Coming on to the molding and the amniotic fluid. So the characteristic of the amniotic fluid is an important indicator of the fetal condition and the fetal well-being. We can also call it as liquor amni. It is observed and it is recorded as a C when the membrane has ruptured and clear fluid oozes out from the vaginal canal or the birth canal, right? We represent it with a C. What if the membrane has not ruptured? So in that case, membrane remains intact and therefore we mark it as I or we represent it with an I. So after the membrane has ruptured, we see that the liquor amni is meconium stained or greenish in color, so we represent it as an M or by the letter M. Also, if we see that the amniotic fluid is blood stained or has a tinge of blood in it, so we represent it with a B, right? Clear? Coming on to the molding. Molding is the degree or the extent of overlapping of the bones of the fetal skull, usually into an oblong shape rather than a round shape. Why? For accommodation into the pelvis and easier passage through the birth canal. It is recorded and observed as a 0 or an O when the bones are separated and the sutures can be felt easily. See here, like the bones are separated and the sutures can be felt easily on palpation. We represent it with a plus, that is a single plus, when the bones are touching one another but are not overlapping each other. We represent it again with a double plus or a plus plus when the bones are slightly. Also, we represent it with a triple plus or a plus 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 when the bones are severely overlapping each other. Again, if the bones are not overlapping each other, they are separated and the sutures can be felt easily, we represent it with a 0 or an O. If the bones are touching each other but are not overlapping, we represent it with a plus. If the bones are slightly overlapping one another, we represent it with a plus plus or a double plus. When the bones are severely overlapping each other, we represent it with a triple plus or a plus plus plus. Clear? So coming on to the other section, we have the progress of labor. So for the progress of labor, we generally consider three parameters. So we have the first parameter being the cervical dilatation, which is plotted as an X, Then we have the descent of the fetal head, which is plotted with a 0 or an O, as we can say. Then we have the uterine contractions represented with appropriate symbols in a 10 minutes period, or as we can say, per 10 minutes period. So we will see into each of these. Coming into the first section, we have the cervical dilatation. So cervical dilatation is one of the most important observation to monitor the progress of labor. The dilatation is plotted on the alert line on the graph on admission in the active phase, and further examinations are made every 4 hourly. But on the partograph representing the cervical dilatation, we see there is the presence of two lines. This is the alert line, and this is the action line. So we have two lines, the alert line and the action line. So the alert line is drawn 4 cm to 10 cm. Here we see it's 4 cm, 10 cm. Alert line is drawn from 4 cm to 10 cm and represents the rate of cervical dilatation. If the cervical dilatation moves on the left of the alert line, that is, say we have a mother and her cervical dilatation is 4 cm on our first assessment, then on our subsequent assessment we find that the cervical dilatation 7 cm. Again we have it, say 9 cm. We represent it by joining the lines, joining the crosses with us. Here we see that our graph or the representation is on the left side of the alert line. This is the alert line and this is our marking or our representation, and it is on the left side of the alert line. We can see in this case also it is on the left side of the alert line, hence it represents a well progressed labor. On the other hand, if our representation or the progress of labor for the mother crosses the alert line and moves towards the right of the alert line, it represents a delay in the progress of labor. On the other hand, if we consider and if there is a further delay in the progress of labor, and our graphical representation or our plotting of the progress of labor for the mother reaches the action line or touches the action line, there should be a critical assessment of the cause of delay, and a decision about the appropriate management should be taken immediately, as this is a severe delay in the progress of labor and it requires immediate intervention. Maybe a cesarean section could be an option. So coming on to the other parameter, we have the descent of the fetal head. So for the descent, we will come on to the next slide and we'll be back to the present slide. So for the descent of the fetal head, we have the fetal presenting part gradually descends down until delivery. So the position of the leading bony part is estimated in relation to the ischial spine of the mother. So here we have the ischial spine of the mother, the other side as well, ischial spine of the mother, and this is the presenting part of the fetus, as we can see. So Here we see it is at the level of the ischial spine. Hence, it is represented as station 0. It is represented as station 0 when it is at the level of the ischial spine. As the fetal presenting part descends downwards below the ischial spine, it is represented as +1, +2, +3, +4 and +5 centimeter. So with each centimeter descent from the ischial spine, it is recorded and represented as a +1, +2, +3, +4 and +5. Likewise, if the fetal presenting part is 1 centimeter higher than the ischial spine, we consider it as -1, station -1. Then if it is 2 centimeter higher than the ischial spine, it is station -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, moving back onto the previous slide, we have for the descent of the fetal head, we represent it as a 0 or an O. We plot it as a 0 or an O as per our finding, and suppose on our subsequent findings we will again plot it with a 0 or an O, and with the further descent up till station 5, when it is at the introitus, when the presenting part is at the introitus, we will join the dots or the O with a line graph again. Hence, it represents the descent of the fetal head. So, we plot the cervical dilatation and the descent of the fetal head against time on the horizontal axis. That is, each small box out here, the small box represent half-hour duration or a 30-minute duration, and on the other hand, one large box represent 1 hour time duration or a period of 1 hour. So we have to mention the time here when the mother has arrived into under our care and the cervical dilatation has begun. So for example, if the cervical dilatation has begun at 4 centimeter and we have started our plotting of the partograph at 4 centimeter at around 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. So we will mark it as 8 here, we'll mention the time. Subsequently, we'll mark the each next hour here. Coming on to the uterine contraction. So the uterine contractions are recorded for 10 minutes in an appropriate square boxes. So here we see the section here. So this section representing the uterine contractions per 10 minutes. So here we have numbered boxes, 5 boxes here numbered as 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Ideally, we expect there to be maximum of 5 uterine contractions in a 10 minutes duration or 10 minutes time period. Hence, we have 5 boxes mentioned here. Again, as per the intensity of contraction and the duration of the contraction, we have 3 types of uterine contractions. These are mild contractions, moderate contractions and severe contractions. Mild contractions are represented with dotted box or represented with dots, and then these mild contractions last lesser than 20 seconds. Then we have moderate contractions lasting for 20 to 40 seconds and are represented by partially shaded boxes, as we can see, partially shaded boxes. Then we have stronger contractions or intense uterine contractions lasting for more than 40 seconds and are represented by fully shaded boxes or completely shaded boxes. As we can see here, you can see 2 mild contractions lasting for lesser than 20 seconds represented with 2 dotted boxes. Here we have 3 mild contractions lasting for lesser than 20 seconds represented by 3 dotted boxes. Here we have 4 moderate contractions lasting for 20 to 40 seconds represented by partially shaded boxes. Then here we see that we have 5 boxes marked or represented with completely shaded boxes represent stronger contractions or intense contractions lasting more than 40 seconds. This section consists of 2 lines, one for the record of the unit of oxytocin per liter of intravenous fluid, and the other one is for drop of fluid per minute. The recording can be made at interval of 30 minutes as the uterine contraction occurs. So here we see in the first section or the first line, we represent the concentration of the oxytocin or the unit of the oxytocin, as we can say. For example, if we are administering 10 units of oxytocin, then we will mention it as 10 or we'll record it as 10. Suppose we change the dose to 20 units of oxytocin, we will mention it as 20, and then on the second line we see that it is drops in minute. So if we are administering 5 drops per minute, we will represent it with a 5. If we are administering 10 drops per minute, we will represent it with a 10, right? Coming on to the other section, so we have the drugs and the other intravenous fluid. So we should record any additional drugs given and record them at particular point of time at which we are administering the drugs. This include the sedatives, antibiotics, IV fluids, etc. The name of the drugs and the dosage given should be mentioned or written clearly in the boxes given below or given here. Like suppose we are administering an injection dexamethasone to the client or to the patient or to the mother in labor. So we will mention the name of the drug, the route of administration, the dosage of the drug, as well as the time of administering the drug. Coming on to the maternal conditions. So this section out here represents the maternal conditions, and it mostly comprises of the maternal vital signs. So the maternal blood pressure is recorded every 4 hourly, and the systolic and diastolic blood pressure is joined by an arrowed line. Here, as we can see, the maternal blood pressure is around 130/80. We have here 130/80. We have here an arrowed line joining 130 systolic blood pressure and 80 the diastolic blood pressure. So we will represent the blood pressure with an arrowed line. We draw an arrow between the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure, right? Coming on to the pulse. Pulse is recorded every 30 minutes and marked by dot, and each dot is then joined by a line graph. Like we have recorded the fetal heart rate, we will again record the maternal pulse. So if on our examination we find that the maternal pulse is around 80, we will represent it with a dot on the line joining 80. Then on our subsequent examination we find that it is somewhere around 88, 89, and then again it is somewhere around 80. Then we have again 80. So we will represent it with a dots, and then we join the dots with a line graph again. So coming on to the temperature. Temperature is recorded every 2 hourly. So on our examination we find that the mother's temperature is somewhere around 36 degrees Celsius. So we represent it with the 36 degrees written in the appropriate column, and hence we will check the maternal temperature every 2 hourly and record it in the appropriate space provided. Coming on to the last section of the Partograph, we have the urine analysis section. During the course of labor, the examination of the urine is of utmost importance because it gives us an idea about the hydration status of the mother, as well as the risk of the preeclampsia of the mother, and risk of gestational diabetes mellitus of the mother. In case of maternal distress, the volume of the urine may decrease and it may contain ketone bodies. So we can do a urine dipstick for the mother and ascertain the ketone and acetone in the maternal urine. Also, we have to record the volume of the urine passed by the mother. So if suppose the mother is passing 200 ml of urine, so we will record it appropriate in the boxes provided. So in the say in the first hour the mother passed 200 ml of urine, in the second hour she did not pass any urine, and in the third hour again she passed around 100 ml of urine. This gives us an overview of the hydration status of the mother, including various other conditions. So coming on to the Partograph advantages and disadvantages, we have the Partograph gives us an early recognition of the fetal maternal problems like the fetal distress, the maternal risk of preeclampsia, and then maternal hydration status, etc. It is highly effective in reducing the complications from prolonged labor, as we can ascertain the delay and the precipitation of the labor as per our plotting of the Partograph against the alert line and the action line. Then it also facilitates the handover process, as any known person who is acquainted with a Partograph can easily go through the Partograph and get an overview of the progress of the labor or the course of the labor and give the handover process. Then we have the recognition of the cephalopelvic disproportion. And coming on to the disadvantages, we have that the Partograph assumes that all women progress at the same rate. No two individuals are alike, but yet the Partograph assumes that all women progress at the same rate. Hence, there are standardized markings on the Partograph, standardized durations of the Partograph. So, the clinical findings may have subjective variations, like every individual is different, hence, the clinical findings and the clinical records will be different from mother to mother or from woman to woman. The lack of knowledge may affect the practice of Partograph. A person who is not acquainted with the practice of Partograph may not be able to effectively use the Partograph. Then it may be time consuming for the person plotting the Partograph in case of patient overload or in case of emergency situation. Thank you.